This is part 3 of pa3's video walkthrough. Now let's walk through server101.go. Let's do this on the editor because it looks prettier here. First line is package main. Yeah, this means we include all the basic APIs. And then we include 3 more sets of APIs. First two are format and buff.io, which we've already seen in pa2. The third is the package net. This is very important. This is also the package that we'll be importing for all the assignments in the rest of the semester. So what's defined there are all these socket.io APIs. Reading from socket, writing from socket, or more basically, opening sockets and closing sockets. Down here you're seeing the first line that looks new to you is exactly to open a socket. Net.listen here is to open a very special type of socket called the listener socket. So we specify what type of transport service we're going to give to this listener socket. We also specify the address of the listener socket. So A0, A3 here is the port number that I use temporarily for the demo purpose. And the listener socket, we are actually assigning it so that it runs over a TCP connection. This is a reliable data service that we'll talk about a little bit in chapter 2, but a lot more in chapter 3. Alright, so listener socket is a TCP connection running on port A083. The return values of net.listen are twofold. One is exactly the handle to the socket. So ln here is a variable of the connection type. Okay, so socket's handle is always the connection type, which is also defined in the net package. Second value is the error message. So we'll just ignore this for the interest of time. Now the second call that we see, ln.accept. This one here also creates a socket. Accept creates also a socket, but it's a data socket. Unlike the listener socket, listen creates. Okay. So ln.accept is a method of the connect type object. What it does is it waits for a connection request. So this is typically coming from a client. If there's one such connection request arriving at port A083, the listener socket calls the accept method and creating the data socket. So that is the value returned by the API, and we store in conn another variable also of the connection type. Again, let's just underscore the error, ignore processing of the error. The next two lines, defer, ln close, defer, conn close. These are to close the two sockets we created earlier. ln, the listener socket, conn, the data socket. Now, defer is saying that we will be closing the sockets at the end of the program, which is down here, after the write flash. Yeah, because of course we cannot be closing the socket now because we are still to receive the string, right? And telling back the client what is the size of the string. Good. Next, buff.io new scanner. Cool, this is familiar, right? We have used this call before to wrap around the file handle so we could read, we can scan from the file. This time, we actually wrap the scanner around the data connection. And so that when we call scanner scan, we read from the data connection, which means we read from what the client is trying to send us. And we read it one line at a time. Scanner text here converts the byte stream into the text, therefore becoming a string. So message here is a string variable storing that message, that string the client sent us. And then we print the string here. Next, we wrap around the socket again with the writer. So writer is so that we could write something out, okay, onto the I/O. So writer here, we can call write string here, therefore writing a message out through the writer, which wraps around the data socket. As a result, the client will receive, okay, the string that we send them. Now, new line is the message we send out through the socket. And it is actually a result of doing this. Format dot sprintf. This is string printf. So what this API does is to print a string onto a string variable. So the output of this API is a string essentially. Now, how do we form the string? So double quote, just like printf, right? Inside the double quote, that is what we intend to print out. And this time, we take a value, and then followed by that, print bytes received, and then new line. And what is the value? It's the value here after the column. Len, parenthesis message. So message is what we have received from the client. So len is the API in the very basic package, the main package, that's taking the message and then find out the length of the message, and so that it's going to be filled here. So new line there will be taking the size of the message and then print size of the message bytes received. All right. Last is just writer.flash. This is to move the string that's still in the memory and then push it physically through the socket and eventually reaching the client. So this is video part 3. We'll move on to the next example in part 4.